Picture a lonely billionaire facing death, until he adopts 5 homeless boys and fills his last days with unbreakable love. From business lessons to bedtime stories, Marcus Chen's life explodes with joy. But as his time runs out, can their family survive? Dive into this incredible true tale now. Imagine a man who had conquered the world, only to be brought to his knees by a single diagnosis. Marcus Chen, the tech titan who started with a tiny electronics shop in Seattle's bustling downtown, had turned his humble beginnings into a multi-billion-dollar empire. His company revolutionized the industry with cutting-edge gadgets that connected the globe, making him one of the richest men alive. Luxury cars lined his garages, private jets whisked him to exotic destinations, and mansions dotted the map like trophies. But amidst all this opulence, Marcus was utterly alone. No wife, no children, just a revolving door of business associates who saw him as a walking wallet. His life was a whirlwind of deals and deadlines, leaving no room for real connections. That is, until a persistent cough unraveled everything. It began innocently enough, a nagging hack that he ignored for months, chalking it up to stress or late-night work sessions. But when the pain grew sharper, Marcus finally sought help. After a barrage of tests and consultations with top specialists, the verdict came down like a hammer. Stage 4 lung cancer, aggressive and unforgiving. 3 months, maybe 6 with aggressive treatment, the doctor said, his voice clinical and detached. Marcus sat there, unflinching, his face a mask of composure he'd perfected in countless boardroom battles. Inside, though, a storm raged. How could this be happening? He was only 48, a man who had outsmarted competitors and scaled mountains of challenges. Yet here he was, facing an enemy he couldn't negotiate with. That night, Marcus stood on the balcony of his sleek penthouse, the city lights twinkling below like a sea of stars. The cool Seattle air filled his lungs, but it brought no comfort. "What's it all been for?" he muttered to the emptiness. All those grueling years, starting from that cramped shop where he sold refurbished phones, working dawn till dusk to build his first prototype, fighting tooth and nail for investors, had led to this? A fortune that could buy anything except time. No family to hold his hand, no legacy to leave behind. Just cold, hard cash and a life that felt hollow. As he gripped the railing, a wave of regret washed over him. He had chased success at the expense of everything else, and now with death staring him in the face, he craved something real. Something that mattered. The turning point came unexpectedly. Driving through the city one rainy afternoon, Marcus spotted a group of kids huddled under a bridge. They were laughing, sharing a beat-up umbrella and a bag of chips, their faces lit up despite the downpour. 5 boys, no older than 15, living on the streets with nothing but each other. They reminded him of his own scrappy youth, when he'd slept on a friend's couch to make ends meet. But these kids had it worse, no safety net, no one to guide them. An idea sparked in his mind, bold and crazy. What if he could change their lives? What if, in his final days, he could build a family out of strangers? It was impulsive, but Marcus had always been a man of action. He pulled over, approached the group, and struck up a conversation. Their names were Alex, Ben, Chris, Danny, and Ethan, each with a story of abandonment, loss, and survival. Alex, the leader, was street-smart and suspicious. Ben dreamed of being an artist but had never held a brush. Chris was the jokester, hiding his pain behind laughs. Danny was quiet and bookish, yearning for stability, and Ethan, the youngest, was wide-eyed and hopeful despite it all. Adopting them wasn't simple. Marcus faced a wall of skepticism. Social workers questioned his motives. Why would a dying billionaire want 5 troubled teens? Friends and colleagues laughed it off as a midlife crisis or a publicity stunt. Even the boys were wary, pushing back with attitude and distrust. "Why should we trust you?" Alex challenged him during their first meeting at a shelter. Marcus didn't have all the answers, but he was honest. "I'm not here to save you," he said. "I'm here because I need saving too." Slowly, the walls began to crack. Marcus used his resources to navigate the legal maze, fighting for custody with the same determination he'd used to build his company. Once home, the real work began. There were clashes, broken rules, heated arguments, and moments of doubt. But amid the chaos, bonds formed. Marcus taught them about business, sharing lessons from his rise to the top, while they taught him about living in the moment. They cooked meals together in his massive kitchen, played video games late into the night, and explored the city he'd always taken for granted. As Marcus's health declined, the treatment sapping his strength, the boys became his rock. He invested in their futures, setting up scholarships and trusts, but more importantly, he gave them love. Alex found confidence in entrepreneurship, starting a small side hustle with Marcus's guidance. Ben discovered his artistic talent through art classes Marcus funded. Chris learned to open up, sharing his fears and dreams. Danny buried himself in books, aiming for college, and Ethan bloomed under the stability, his laughter filling the house. In return, they gave Marcus a family. He laughed more in those months than in the previous decade, finding joy in simple things like park outings or bedtime stories. When the end came, it was peaceful. Surrounded by his new sons, Marcus passed away knowing he'd left a mark. The boys, heartbroken but empowered, carried on his legacy. They turned his mansion into a foundation for at-risk youth, honoring the man who had shown them that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch. Marcus Chen, the lonely millionaire, had transformed his final days into a story of hope, proving that even in the face of death, it's never too late to build something that lasts. Imagine a man staring death in the face, yet finding a spark of life in the unlikeliest place. It was just 2 days after Marcus Chen's world-shattering diagnosis, and he was being chauffeured through the rain-slick streets of Seattle to yet another specialist appointment. His mind was a whirlwind of treatments, timelines, and regrets. But as the car slowed at a red light, something caught his eye. A group of 5 young boys clustered near a rundown subway entrance. They were sharing a single tattered sandwich, their laughter cutting through the gray drizzle like a ray of sunshine. Despite their ragged clothes and dirt-streaked faces, they moved with a unity that spoke volumes. The oldest, maybe 15, carefully tore the bread into equal pieces, while the youngest, no more than 8, beamed with gratitude. When the rain intensified, the older boys shrugged off their thin jackets to shield the smaller ones, their bond unbreakable even in hardship. Marcus couldn't look away. Here were kids with nothing. No home, no security. Yet they had something he lacked: genuine connection. "Stop the car," he ordered his driver, his voice firm despite the turmoil inside him. The driver hesitated, glancing at the clock. "Sir, we're going to be late for—" "Cancel the appointment," Marcus interrupted, already stepping out into the downpour. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle them. The boys tensed, their laughter fading as they eyed this well-dressed stranger. One of them, the oldest, stepped forward protectively, his eyes narrow with suspicion. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Marcus said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. He sat on a nearby bench, not invading their space, and asked simply, "How long have you boys been out here?" The oldest, Alex, hesitated before replying. "Long enough," he muttered, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. Slowly, the ice began to thaw. Alex introduced himself and his brothers, not by blood, but by the streets that had forged their family. Ben, the artist with dreams bigger than his circumstances, spoke of running away from an abusive foster home. Chris, the class clown, cracked a joke to ease the tension, but his eyes betrayed the pain of being abandoned by his parents. Danny, the quiet one, shared how he'd been living on scraps since his mom passed away, finding solace in borrowed library books. And Ethan, the youngest, with a gap-toothed smile, admitted he was scared but grateful for the group that kept him safe. As they talked, Marcus listened intently, his own story bubbling up inside him. He told them about his diagnosis, not for sympathy, but to level the playing field. "I'm dying," he said bluntly. "Doctors gave me 3 months. And here I am, richer than I can imagine, but I've got no one. You kids have each other. That's worth more than all my money." The boys were stunned, their tough exteriors cracking. Alex, still wary, challenged him. "So what, you think you can fix us? We're not charity cases." Marcus shook his head. "I'm not here to fix anyone. I see myself in you. I was alone once, fighting to survive. Maybe we can help each other." The rain let up, but the conversation deepened. Ben sketched a quick drawing on a napkin, showing Marcus a glimpse of his talent, while Chris made everyone laugh with stories of their misadventures scavenging food. Danny quoted a book he'd read, his voice steady despite the shivers from the cold, and Ethan tugged at Marcus's sleeve, asking innocent questions about rich people stuff. In that moment, Marcus felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. These boys weren't just survivors, they were a family, bound by loyalty and love. He realized that in his quest for wealth, he'd forgotten what it meant to truly live. As the sun broke through the clouds, Marcus made a silent vow. He couldn't change his fate, but he could change theirs. "Would you let me buy you a proper meal?" he offered. The boys exchanged glances, and after a pause, Alex nodded. That simple act of kindness was the first step toward something profound. Over the next few weeks, Marcus would fight bureaucracy and skepticism to bring them into his life. But right there on that wet street corner, the seeds of transformation were planted. For Marcus, it was no longer about counting his days, it was about making them count. And for the boys, a stranger's compassion became the light that guided them out of the darkness. Imagine a man with the world at his feet, yet finding his true purpose in the eyes of 5 strangers. After that fateful encounter in the rain, Marcus Chen couldn't shake the image of those boys from his mind. For the next week, he made it his mission to visit them every day, pulling up in his sleek black SUV with bags of groceries, warm clothes, and a genuine curiosity that bridged the gap between their worlds. At first, the boys were cautious, eyeing him like a potential threat, but Marcus's quiet persistence won them over. He didn't come as a savior. He came as a friend, sharing stories of his own tough beginnings while listening to theirs. It was a week that changed everything, transforming fleeting acquaintance into unbreakable bonds. Miguel, the 15-year-old leader, was the first to warm up. With his sharp eyes and protective nature, he reminded Marcus of his younger self, street-smart and resilient. Miguel had been on his own since he was 12, after his single mother overdosed, leaving him to fend for himself. Marcus brought him books on business and technology, sparking conversations that lasted hours. "You could run a company one day," Marcus told him one evening, as they sat on a park bench sharing takeout. Miguel scoffed at first, but the seed was planted. Then there was James, 13, a kid with a mind like a computer. Brilliant but broke, he had dropped out of school to work odd jobs, scavenging for food and dreaming of inventions he could never afford to build. Marcus brought him gadgets and old tech manuals, watching James's eyes light up as he tinkered with circuits. "I never had a chance at this," James admitted one day, his voice cracking. "But you do now," Marcus replied, seeing the potential that poverty had nearly extinguished. The twin brothers, David and Daniel, both 11, were a bundle of energy and heartbreak. Their parents had died in a horrific car accident 2 years earlier, leaving them to bounce between overcrowded foster homes before they ran away. They stuck together like glue, finishing each other's sentences and sharing a mischievous grin that hid their deep-seated fear. Marcus played games with them, teaching them chess and card tricks, but it was during quiet moments that they opened up. "We don't want to be split up again," Daniel whispered one rainy afternoon, clutching his brother's hand. Marcus nodded, his heart aching. "I'll make sure that doesn't happen," he promised, though he didn't know how yet. And then there was little Thomas, just 8 years old, the youngest and most vulnerable. He barely remembered what a real home felt like, having been abandoned by his family and surviving on the kindness of strangers. Thomas was shy at first, hiding behind Miguel, but Marcus's gentle approach drew him out. He brought toys and storybooks, reading aloud in a soft voice that made Thomas giggle. "Do you think I could have a dad like you?" Thomas asked innocently one day. Marcus paused, the question hitting him like a punch. "Maybe," he said, his voice thick with emotion. As the days passed, Marcus found himself looking forward to these visits more than anything else. He brought hot meals, clean clothes, and even a small tent to keep them dry, but it was the conversations that mattered most. The boys shared their dreams and fears, while Marcus opened UPA about his lonely life, his cancer diagnosis, and the regret that gnawed at him. "I've got all this money, but it's useless if I have no one to share it with," he confessed to Miguel one night. In return, the boys gave him something priceless: laughter, trust, and a sense of belonging. They played soccer in the park, shared jokes over pizza, and for the first time in years Marcus felt alive. But beneath the surface a decision was brewing, one that would shock everyone. On the 7th day, Marcus woke up with a clarity that cut through his pain. He had spent 58 years chasing wealth, building an empire that now felt like a hollow victory. These boys had filled a void he didn't know existed. That morning he strode into his lawyer's upscale office, his face set with determination. I want to adopt 5 boys, he announced without preamble. The lawyer, a gray-haired man who'd handled Marcus's affairs for decades, nearly dropped his coffee mug. Marcus, are you serious? You're dying. The courts will never go for this. Your cousins and distant relatives are already sniffing around, waiting to claim your estate. This is madness. Adopting 5 kids when you have months left? They'll say you're not fit, that it's impulsive or worse. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes steely. I've never been more certain. I've accumulated billions, but I've got nothing that lasts. These boys, they're my chance to leave a real legacy. Miguel, James, David, Daniel, and Thomas, they've been abandoned by the world just like I was once. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for them. And if the courts fight me, I'll fight back with every resource I have. The lawyer stared, speechless, as Marcus continued. I don't care about the inheritance or the scandal. Let them laugh or judge. In my final months, I want to be a father, to give them the stability I never had. It's not about money. It's about family. As he left the office, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead would be tough, legal battles, social worker scrutiny, and the progression of his illness, but he was ready. Those 7 days had shown him that life wasn't about how much you have, but who you share it with. And in the eyes of 5 boys who had nothing, he had found everything. Within hours, Marcus Chen's bold decision to adopt 5 street boys had transformed from a private choice into a global spectacle. Headlines blared across every screen. Dying billionaire's bizarre final wish and tech mogul goes mad? Splashed across newspapers, websites, and social media feeds. Paparazzi camped outside his Seattle penthouse, cameras flashing like strobe lights, while talk shows dissected the story with a mix of shock and skepticism. Is this a midlife crisis on steroids or just a rich man's delusion? One pundit quipped on live TV. Marcus, the reclusive tech titan who'd once commanded boardrooms with ease, now found himself at the center of a storm he never anticipated. His phone buzzed nonstop with calls from curious journalists, former colleagues, and even strangers weighing in on his sanity. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. His board of directors, a group of sharp-suited executives who'd profited handsomely from his innovations, held emergency meetings in the glass-walled conference rooms of Chuntech headquarters. This could tank our stock, one director shouted, slamming a fist on the table. They worried about the company's image, fearing that Marcus's eccentricity would scare off investors and partners. Distant relatives who hadn't bothered to call in years suddenly materialized like ghosts from the past. Cousins and aunts he'd barely known crawled out of the woodwork, filing legal claims that he was mentally incompetent, unfit to make such decisions in his fragile state. They painted him as a man unhinged by his diagnosis, desperate to squander his fortune on a whim. He's not thinking straight, he's got cancer, for heaven's sake, one relative told a reporter, their eyes gleaming with greed for the inheritance. The media lapped it up, turning Marcus into a tabloid villain overnight, with viral videos speculating about his motives and mocking his vulnerability. But amid the frenzy, Marcus refused to back down. The same unyielding determination that had built his billion-dollar empire now fueled his fight for what he believed was right. He hired the best family lawyers in the country, a team of fierce advocates who'd won impossible cases before, and dove headfirst into the legal battle. This isn't about money or pity, he told them in their first meeting, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on his face. They prepared him for court, putting him through rigorous psychological evaluations to prove his mental fitness. Doctors probed his mind with tests and interviews, questioning his decisions under the harsh light of scrutiny. Marcus answered every query with clarity, his responses a testament to his resolve. I'm dying, yes, but that doesn't make me delusional, he said during one session, his eyes fierce. It makes me human. As the weeks dragged on, the boys became an unexpected pillar of strength. Social workers assigned by the court to investigate visited the group multiple times, interviewing them in sterile offices that felt worlds away from their street life. Miguel, the 15-year-old leader, spoke first, his voice unwavering. Marcus isn't some crazy guy. He's the first person who's ever really cared, he said, his words carrying the weight of a lifetime of neglect. James, the 13-year-old genius, chimed in with quiet passion, explaining how Marcus had brought him books and encouraged his dreams, tears welling in his eyes as he added, He's giving us a future when no one else would. The twins, David and Daniel, held hands under the table, their young voices overlapping as they described the games and stories Marcus shared, turning their days from survival to something resembling normalcy. Even little Thomas, just 8, piped up with innocent sincerity. He's like a dad. He reads to me and makes sure we're okay. Their genuine affection, raw and unscripted, began to chip away at the skeptics. Social workers' reports noted the boys' enthusiasm, and even the harshest critics in the media started to pause, wondering if there was more to this story than met the eye. The courtroom showdown was the climax of it all, a tense drama that played out under the watchful eyes of the public. The judge, a stern figure with graying hair and a reputation for tough rulings, eyed Marcus with initial doubt as he took the stand. The room was packed, reporters scribbling notes, relatives glaring from the back, and the boys watching nervously from a side bench. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "Your Honor, I'm not trying to buy love or carve out some grand legacy," he began, his words echoing through the hushed room. "I've spent my life chasing wealth, building an empire that now feels like dust. But these boys, they've shown me what really matters. I'm dying and I know that. But in my last months I want to ensure they have what I never gave myself. A real family. I've set up trusts to cover their education, appointed guardians to watch over them long after I'm gone, and planned for every detail so they won't end up back on the streets. All I'm asking is for the chance to be their father, even if it's just for a little while. Isn't that what life is about, choosing to care when it counts?" The judge listened, his expression softening as Marcus's testimony unfolded. There was a collective hush as the words sank in, the raw honesty cutting through the cynicism. After weeks of legal wrangling, depositions, counterarguments, and endless debates, the decision came down. The judge hammered his gavel, announcing the adoption approved. The room erupted in a mix of gasps and murmurs, but for Marcus, it was a moment of quiet triumph. He glanced at the boys, their faces lighting up with joy, and felt a warmth he'd never known. In that instant, the billionaire who'd faced down corporations and death itself had won his greatest battle. The media spin would continue, but nothing could diminish the new family he'd fought for. As they left the courthouse together, hand in hand, Marcus knew his legacy wasn't in stocks or headlines. It was in the lives he'd changed forever. The billionaire, once defined by boardrooms and balance sheets, now found his days filled with the simple, profound magic of family. His sprawling mansion, once a silent monument to his success, echoed with the sounds of boyish laughter and playful chaos. Despite the shadow of his stage 4 cancer looming larger each day, Marcus poured his remaining energy into the 5 young lives he'd chosen to embrace. His body weakened, treatments leaving him exhausted and frail, but his spirit ignited like a flame in the wind, burning brighter than ever before. For the first time, he understood that true wealth wasn't in his bank accounts. It was in the bonds he was forging, one precious moment at a time. Every morning, Marcus started with Miguel, the 15-year-old protector who'd quickly become like a son to him. In the home office that once housed endless work calls, Marcus now shared the secrets of his empire. "Business isn't just about making money," he'd say, his voice raspy from the medications, as he guided Miguel through spreadsheets and market trends on a laptop screen. Miguel, with his street-smart instincts and hungry eyes, soaked it all in. They discuss real-world scenarios, how to negotiate a deal or spot a good investment, turning abstract lessons into practical tools. "You're a natural leader," Marcus told him one afternoon, clapping a weak hand on his shoulder. Miguel, who had spent years fending for himself, beamed with pride, his tough exterior cracking to reveal the vulnerable boy beneath. These sessions weren't just education. They were a passing of the torch, a way for Marcus to leave a piece of himself behind. As the weeks went on, Miguel even started helping with the mansion's daily operations, organizing family activities with a maturity that amazed everyone. Then there was James, the 13-year-old prodigy whose mind rivaled Marcus's own inventive genius. Despite his weakening body, Marcus dedicated afternoons to tutoring James in advanced mathematics, pulling out dusty textbooks and whiteboards from his private library. "Numbers are the language of the universe," Marcus would wheeze, his breath short but his enthusiasm unwavering. They'd tackle complex equations together, James's eyes lighting up as he solved problems that had stumped him on the streets. Marcus brought in educational software and online courses, turning the mansion into a makeshift classroom. Even on days when chemotherapy left Marcus bedridden, he'd summon the energy to review James's work, offering praise that fueled the boy's dreams of becoming an engineer. "You see possibilities where others see walls," Marcus said during one late-night session, his voice a whisper. James, who had once felt invisible, found in Marcus a mentor who believed in him unconditionally, their shared passion bridging the gap between generations. The twins, David and Daniel, at 11 years old, brought a burst of energy that kept the household alive. Despite his declining health, joints aching, steps growing slower, Marcus joined them for spirited soccer games in the mansion's vast backyard. The grass underfoot, the ball flying through the air, it was a far cry from his corporate life. "Come on, Dad, you can do it," Daniel would shout, his face alight with mischief, as Marcus mustered a weak kick that still managed to score. David, the more daring of the two, would tackle and laugh, their games filled with the kind of carefree joy Marcus had never experienced. Even when his body protested, forcing him to sit on the sidelines, he'd cheer them on, his heart swelling with every goal. These moments weren't just play. They were therapy, a reminder that life was about movement and mirth, not just survival. The twins, who had lost their parents in a tragic accident, found in Marcus a father figure who showed them how to embrace the present, creating memories that chased away their shadows. And every night, without fail, Marcus reserved his gentlest moments for little Thomas, the 8-year-old who had stolen his heart. Tucking the boy into bed in one of the mansion's cozy guest rooms, Marcus read bedtime stories from a growing collection of books he'd amassed. His voice, though frail and sometimes interrupted by coughs, wove tales of adventure and heroism, transporting Thomas to worlds far from the streets. "And they lived happily ever after," Marcus would finish, his eyes meeting Thomas's wide ones. The boy, who barely remembered a stable home, would snuggle closer, whispering, "Will you read another tomorrow, Dad?" Marcus always agreed, even on nights when pain kept him awake. These quiet rituals became the anchor of his days, a soothing balm for his weary soul. Thomas's innocent affection, a hug, a simple "I love you," reminded Marcus of the purity of childhood, something he'd sacrificed in his pursuit of success. As his health declined, the mansion transformed into a haven of laughter and love. The boys filled every corner with their vibrant energy. Chaotic family dinners where voices overlapped in a symphony of stories and jokes, plates clattering as they shared meals prepared by a hired chef. Marcus, seated at the head of the table, would smile through his fatigue, listening to their tales of the day. Weekends brought adventures, trips to the local park, where they'd feed ducks and play tag, or short getaways to the countryside, the fresh air a respite for Marcus's aching lungs. Board games turned into epic battles, with Miguel strategizing like a CEO and the twins cheating with gleeful grins, while James calculated odds and Thomas giggled at every turn. These activities weren't extravagant, they were the stuff of ordinary life, yet for Marcus they were extraordinary. His spirit soared, lifting him above the physical pain, as the boy's presence warded off the loneliness that had once defined him. In those final months, Marcus lived more fully than in all his years combined. The chaos, spilled juice on the carpets, pillow fights in the halls, was a beautiful disruption to his once sterile world. He watched the boys grow, their confidence blooming under his care, and knew he'd made the right choice. As his body faded, his legacy took root in their hearts, a testament to the power of chosen family. And though the end drew near, the memories they created would echo forever, a reminder that love, in its purest form, defies even the limits of time. Thanks for watching. If Marcus's story made you feel good, please press the like button, tap subscribe, and the bell so you don't miss our next video. Tell us what you think in the comments. Share this video with a friend who needs a little hope. See you next time.